Home the gold.
He could be too far. No, he's kicking. Oh, what a catch!
Puts a spicy forehand out in front of Naomi Morcilla.
Move for the win. Team Canada. Garrett Wu!
Santos with the layout grab.
Oh, that fantastic grab. The claws of Chapter.
Canada just became the world champions.
Yo, Canada and the rest of the world. You're listening to the Huckin podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate. I'm one of your hosts, Theo from Toronto, Ontario. If you're watching the YouTube version of this right now, you may notice someone looking a little different than our usual Danny Proby. So we got a guest host in the house, super excited. Kelsey Hayden joining us. Kelsey, introduce yourself to the Huckin audience.
Hey everyone. So I am Kelsey Hayden. I work with Ultiworld sometimes since 2019, and I play on Salty, which is a women's team out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And longtime listener, short-time friend of Huckin podcast.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. That's always That's always the meme right there. But we're going to jump into sort of like how your weekend was, because you mentioned you're from Halifax, but you were not in Halifax this past weekend. You were actually in the nation's capital. So talk a little bit more about the experience there in Ottawa.
Yeah, so Salty actually participated in a women's tournament in Ottawa at the UPI Fields. It was kind of more officially called the Ottawa Invite and then morphed into the Fishbowl. So that's what everyone was calling it this weekend, was Fishbowl 2022. So it was a pretty cool, I guess it wasn't totally a tournament. It was kind of a series of exhibition games. Where 5 out of 6 of the Canadian women's teams that are going to Worlds next month came to Ottawa to compete and get some really high-level reps. So it was us, Salty, Fusion from Winnipeg, Sixers from Toronto, Iris from Quebec, and Stella from Ottawa. So that was the host team. It was so much fun. Salty played 4 games on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. Most teams played 5 or 6 games throughout the weekend. The wind was crazy on Saturday. It started windy and it just got windier and windier, which was really, really challenging, but really good practice. And it really made for some good parity for the games. It was so much fun. It felt great to fly to a tournament again. It felt great to play these teams that some teams which we haven't played. Celti's never played Fusion, so that was really exciting. It's been years since we played Sixers and Iris, so that was really fun. It just felt so normal and it felt so good, and it felt so nice to sit on the sideline and watch really good Ultimate and play really good Ultimate and see these players that I haven't seen in years. It was just like it was a really good weekend.
Yeah, you had to fly out, as you mentioned, and so you flew out. It looks like probably would have been Friday, correct?
Yeah. So that was kind of how I started all my Spirit Circle talks. Was, Salty doesn't get to play against other people very often. We've been practicing since the first week of March, and we have not gotten to play against anybody else for 3.5 months. So we were super excited to get on a plane and play against new people and not have, the other team know every single play and every single move we were going to make. We have to fly to, or we have a long travel to all of our tournaments anyways. Even when we go to sectionals, it's like a 9-hour drive. So, we're used to that aspect of it, and that aspect just makes it even more fun.
Yeah, probably some bonding stories that may or not be allowed to be shared on the pod, but
yeah.
Great weekend for you. I know, well, I was there for one day, the windy day of Saturday there. And so we'll talk about it more in the news section, but you can catch some of the games possibly on the Ultiworld site. By the time this drops, hopefully a couple games will be up there. Gotta get to the editing part of these games here. But we're going to jump into the news now, Kelsey, because there's a lot to talk about, not just the Fishbowl, but obviously, there's a big tournament we're going to highlight in the main event in World Masters, but lots of things going on. So we're going to jump to the news right now.
We now have breaking news.
So in the news section, Canadian news, we're going to start with overall Canadian news here, Kelsey, and that's going to be CUC bids being handed out One thing I'll say before we get into the senior division, the adult or regular, as I've called it, and been told not to say that, but the Masters division, the registrations are still available because they're trying to like fill out the division. I'm sure you saw that. So like, for example, the Open has 5 teams. So trying to get that 6 team. So this is a call to action for any Masters Open teams wanting to play nationals. You don't have to qualify. You just play. So get in and sign up.
That's the Masters dream.
That actually is true. You don't have to practice, and you just go in.
You just walk to nationals.
That is true, especially if you're from Ottawa. So Ottawa, get another team in or something. But the big news is that Quebec actually has more bids this time around for the Open division. So they have 5 bids, 9 teams. Ontario has 4 bids with 7 teams. And in the mixed division, interestingly enough, Ontario has 7 bids for 11 teams, and Quebec has 7 and 7. So they get 7 bids for 7 teams. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Kelsey, but every other province and team out there, if they want to go, they're going.
That's my understanding. That's definitely that's definitely what happens, because I know Newfoundland gets its own bid, and there's only one Newfoundland team, and Atlantic Canada, or the rest of Atlantic Canada, gets their own bids for the Maritimes. And I know nobody here is fighting for spots. So, yeah, it's always interesting to me when I hear about Ontario regionals, because I'm like, regionals? What?
Yeah, I mean, and I had to, of course, talk to the fact checker of the Huckin podcast himself, and just asking sort of like for a quick summary of how they figure this out, so that people, maybe they're not digging into the documents. So here's what I was told. Ultimate Canada ranks the regions by size and use that order to give out unused or extra bids. So they go down the list 1 bid at a time until it runs out. And if they get to the bottom of the list and there still are bids available, then it goes back to the top. So I guess that's how they figured out in terms of like how Quebec got those bids and things like that. And there's also like a strength bid too. So it's kind of complicated. I'm not going to delve too much into it. But what you need to know is, if you're an Ontario Open team, you got some work to do. Same thing with the mixed, and same thing if you're in Quebec. If you're in BC, you're in Manitoba, you're sitting pretty, you're going to nationals, congratulations.
But you got a long flight ahead of you, so that's the cost, You have to fly a lot further.
That is the cost. And looking at juniors as well, didn't talk about that earlier, but looks like there's a development bid to be given out, but otherwise BC has 6. Saskatchewan, welcome to the big dance. You got 1 bid in each division. That's really cool. Manitoba sending 3 teams in the Open division. There's going to be 5 Ontario, 3 Quebec, and am I seeing this right, Kelsey? 2 Newfoundland teams. Is that right?
That's probably right. Yeah, Newfoundland has a huge juniors program. They crush the juniors scene.
St. John's,
I think it's called the Storm. Yeah. It would be based out of St. John's. I bet they have people from around. I'm from Newfoundland, just for context for people. I would guess that they have some people from outside of town as well. But Newfoundland crushes the junior scene. They always have a really strong juniors program.
There you go, and obviously, a province that's known for their juniors program is BC as well, and so they have 7 bids in the junior women's division. They also got the development bid, and then Ontario only has 3, Quebec with 2. So that's sort of interesting looking at this as well. 20 teams in junior open, 16 in junior women. So
that's pretty exciting.
That is exciting for a lot of the teams involved. We've talked about Ottawa a bit on this podcast, and how we've seen the fruits of the labor. And I think you're seeing that on the East Coast as well. Some players making Team Canada, some U24s from your neck of the woods there, Kelsey. So
definitely.
Sounds like the work, laying down the roots, is going to pay off. You just got to wait.
Totally. And especially after 2.5 years of a pandemic and being a really challenging time to get like new people into the sport, to have 36 teams going for a junior tournament is like pretty dope.
Yeah, pretty dope for sure. So that wraps up our bids. So things, of course, can change. So let's say a team drops out, then from what I know, Ontario in the Open, for example, would get the next. They would get
that
the
makes
next
sense
bid, because they're kind of like in waiting. And I will say this has happened before. So quick story time here. In 2014, my team lost in the game to go. We were very sad. We got blown on the game to go. It wasn't close. And I was like, oh, we're not going to nationals. It's our hometown nationals in Waterloo, Ontario. We missed out. A Quebec team drops out, and since we were the next wild card, we got to go. So
that's amazing.
Basically, get to the game to go, because even if, well, obviously you want to win the game to go, but if you lose that, maybe there's a wild card opportunity. But don't.
You never know.
Just win the game to go. That's just easier.
That would be the easiest route.
So now let's just talk Fishbowl. So I know you were there. So
yeah,
tell us, Kelsey, the results. We gotta take them with a grain of salt, because it's like a round robin. Teams might be rolling lines. So kind of talk about how that tournament went. You talked about the experience earlier, but talk about the actual results now.
Yeah, so it was really interesting. So like I said, the conditions were pretty challenging on Saturday, and I do think that different teams approached it kind of differently. So I can only speak to Salty's experience. And so we have a Worlds roster, which is a slightly smaller roster of who we will be taking to Worlds next month. And then we also have practice roster players who have been practicing and working really hard with us all season. And so some of our Worlds rosters folks were not able to come to Fishbowl. A few of them are playing in Masters Worlds will be playing in Masters Worlds in a few days. And a couple of other people had just varying commitments. And so we brought some of our practice roster players who absolutely crushed it, by the way. And so we kind of approached it like, we want to win. We want to try to win every game, but we're also not we're not having anyone sit on the sideline for the entire game. We want it to be a good experience. We want everyone to get a lot of reps. I get the sense that a lot of other teams were kind of thinking the same thing. Like, I don't think people were, tightening their bench so short that there were tons of people not seeing the field at all. But I do think people were playing fairly competitively, if that makes sense. So the results, I think, were kind of interesting. Salty in particular. So we started Saturday by losing on Universe 3 times in a row. So we lost to Fusion, lost to Iris, and then lost to Stella. But all on Universe, like really, really tight games, which was super exciting. We've never had that close of a game with Iris before. Like, it was, I think, 11-10. Which was awesome. We had a really good game with Fusion, and then we had a really interesting game with Stella where we went down 7-1 at half, and then kind of got our stuff in order, and then brought it back to lose on Universe 10-9. So and then Sixers, they're Sixers, so they handedly beat us. But what I think was really interesting, aside from Salty's specific results, was just how much parity there was in amongst these women's teams. And I think a couple of takeaways from that is, one, people are taking this year really seriously. People are really, we all have these Worlds bids that, more Worlds bids than usual. And so, everyone is working really hard to really earn their place in Cincinnati next month. And I also think it just shows how many strong Canadian women Ultimate players there are now. There was 5 teams full of strong Ultimate players. That's awesome. There was no game that felt so lopsided that no one team couldn't play. All the games were tight. Everything was contested. Everything that floated in the air, there was 5 people underneath it. It was incredible. So some of the other results. So like I said, most teams played 6 games. So Stella went 4-2 for the weekend. So that was pretty huge. Sixers, probably not a huge surprise, went 5-0. They did, their closest game was with Iris. Actually, both their games with Iris were their closest games, which is probably not a huge surprise. They're kind of longtime rivals. But they didn't have any super, super tight matches. Salty, like I said, we went 0-6, but honestly, I hate when people say, oh, the score doesn't reflect the games. But in this case, it really felt like the scores didn't reflect the games. We were really happy. Yeah, we were just on Universe all day. Iris went 3-3, and then Fusion went 2-5. So yeah, it was really, really good. It was such high level reps. I think we all got better for it. The conditions weren't easy, but that helps, like that forced us out of our comfort zones. I mean, we're used to wind out here on the East Coast, so the wind wasn't actually that shocking. Later in the day, it did get kind of silly. When we played against Sixers, there were just times where both teams would just look at each other and be like, we've both turned it 4 times this point. Like, what is going on? But it was really fun. And it was really exciting to see like 100 strong Canadian women players.
I mean, I was there. I got to experience it. It was great. For Ulti-World subscribers, if you're not one, you better do it right now, because you are going to be able to watch 2 of the aforementioned games that Kelsey talked about.
Yeah.
2 Universe Point losses were filmed. So let's go behind the camera for that one. That was really awesome. And I know Stella sent us a message and just was really stoked about their results. I mean, they were rolling lines, which seems the same for a lot of teams, but they just wanted to note that this was the first time they've beaten Quebec Iris since 2017. So that's like a really big deal to them. And
definitely
by the scoreline they did, they were really excited. And their final game against Fusion, they had 15 minutes to score 3 points, an 0 point and 2 breaks, and they're able to do so. So
wow.
Kudos to you, Stella, for doing that. And Iris as well, putting up that score against Sixers looks really good. And they had a couple of tight games against Fusion and took the victory. So all the teams I was able to see, as you mentioned, a lot of the rolling lines. I will say it was funny to see 4 of the 5 teams just wearing their like uniforms probably for Worlds. And then you got the Sixers. They got to be a little bit different. I get it. Toronto Sixers.
Yeah.
Got to show the love. But they're rocking the Hawaiian shirts. And then, so it's funny because I saw them wearing the Hawaiian shirts. And then as the day progressed and like it got hotter, you started to see more people not wearing them because they're like, why am I wearing 2 layers? Like, it's not feasible. I'm just going to wear my jersey and not have to wear a Hawaiian shirt. That was funny.
It was a hard day to dress for anyways. It was like really cold in the morning, and then it was kind of damp, and then it kind of warmed up, but the wind was cold. And I mean, like, I'm used to crazy weather. I'm from Newfoundland, but I found I was like shedding and adding layers and gloves all day.
Yeah, I was talking to Noah Marcus, an avid listener of the podcast and photographer who was there.
Yes.
And he mentioned how cold he was, his fingers. Like, I wasn't prepared for the weather. I did not dress for it, like, in terms of packing. So It was kind of a shock to me as well. But I also want to give a shout out to Luna Ultimate out of Ottawa, because they put on an amazing barbecue for all the players and volunteers and things. So kudos to you for doing that. I'm sure you enjoyed that barbecue there, Kelsey.
Definitely. It was such a nice event. Like, Luna put on the barbecue. We had several photographers. We had you doing the film. Like, pretty cool setup for just some exhibition games. It felt very special. And we're already talking about, we have an email thread with the captains of who was involved. We're already talking about Fishbowl 2023. So it's gonna be a big one, and it's gonna just get better and better.
So Fishbowl 2023, hopefully with traffic. Who were they supposed to come? Was that like the plan, or
they were invited? But I think it's just such a long journey.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
but it definitely makes sense. And Fishbowl, we wrap up the Fishbowl for now, but don't be surprised, Huckin audience, if you hear about Fishbowl again in 2023. So we're gonna journey over eastward a little bit into Quebec. They had a tournament, a 1-day tournament. And just in the mixed and open division. So a team that I've been very high on from Gatineau, think that they're probably a quarters level team here at CUC this year. They went 3-0, and the other teams, Loyal, Rage, and Mesa all went 1-2. Loyal getting second because of point diff, so you gotta love that. And then a new mixed team. I don't know too much about them, to be honest with you. I know one of their players, Benno Crozier. Benno was on our podcast before from McGill. He's part of that team. Kombucha Culture. So you know what they like to drink before games. They go 4-0. Harfang, the team that now I know replaces Battleship, went 3-1. And notable result there, Crank, a team that some people think are going to make some noise here at Nationals, going 1-3. So not the results they're looking for in the 1 day, but it's a 1-day tourney. It's kind of like exhibition games, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's early.
So we'll see how they do. I'm excited to see what they do at regional, especially with all the bids, but also the teams fighting for it. So that's sort of the 1-day tourney, and that's what happened there in the east. But let's venture westward. We're gonna spin it into the United States now?
Yeah, so out west, we have a couple of Canadian teams that are going south of the border. So they're going to Eugene Summer Solstice. So we have Furious and Traffic headed down to play in this U.S. tournament. Just looking at the pools, so I think they're just starting right in a power pool, Furious. This really easy pool that they got thrown into has Sockeye, Rhino, Revolver, themselves, and Emerald City. So they're going to be put to the test immediately. But it's going to be super exciting. That's an incredible lineup of teams to get to play right at the beginning to just get you going in your season. And then on the flip side, Traffic is in, so the number one seed in the tournament is Fury, and then Traffic's number 2. In their pool, they're going to have to face off with Riot and Nightlock and then a few other teams. On the Fury, their next best competition in their pool will be Schwa. So some really high level games going to come there. Hopefully Furious and Traffic can have some really good results, but like what excellent reps to get in June. And it's just so nice that they get to have so many good teams nearby to go play. I'm really jealous, but yeah, super excited to see the results from that one. I think that should be really good.
Yeah, Traffic has bested both Schwa and Riot previously, like last year at regionals. So they're ready to go. They'll be sans, no Danny Proby in the house, but
she's busy being a world champion.
Yeah, too busy playing for Q Old, or Cold, I think that's how you call it. But Traffic, looking at the roster, a lot of if you watch any of the college champs there in the audience, you'll recognize a lot of names like Denise Sue's on that team, Nancy Yang, Madison Ong. I don't want to name everyone because I'm going to miss someone. So just look at the list because there's a lot of UBC love in there, which is really awesome to see. And yeah, we're gonna look to see how they do. And for Furious, I do not like. If you follow Ultimate any way, shape, or form, you're gonna know those club teams.
Yeah,
and that's just like a great way to start your tournament season, is it not? Like,
yeah,
your first game. Let's take a look. Your first game at 8:30 a.m. on Saturday morning is against Revolver. Like,
yeah,
that is cool.
That is cool. Like, what an opportunity. Might be a bit of a humbling experience, but
this is not the Revolver of years past.
That's true. Yeah. Sockeye is actually probably the most formidable opponent that they're going to face. But like you said, like, what a huge start to the season. I mean, I guess I don't know how long they've been practicing so far, but like, this is going to get you in gear real fast, which is so ideal. Like, that this is the competition that you dream to play. So
there you go. And we're gonna stay in the West Coast here because another tournament. That's why we titled it Bowl Season here. Flowerbowl. I believe this tournament actually happens earlier in the year, but it's happening now nonetheless. And your top seeds, at least in the open division, will start there. Is Blackfish and TCU20. So Danny mentioned this last episode. If you caught that one, that they had a training camp and kind of scrimmage some teams, whereas the TC Open team is going to have 2 tournaments they're going to. Awesome. So they're going to Flowerbowl and then No Borders, which I believe you're going to as well. Correct?
Salty's not going. Salty's not, but Red Circus is, and I actually might go watch. So
Red Circus is going, yo. Okay,
yeah.
We have to interrupt this for the fact that Red Circus is going to No Borders because I love when they go because no one actually gets to see them.
Yeah,
and they're a hype team. And
they are. Thank you. They really are.
Hey, I know there's some Red Circus listeners in the audience, so gotta give them some love. But back to the pools here. Blackfish, TC Open, and then the next 2 seeds, teams you may have heard of. AFC, they're actually going as 4 Shock, and I was asking Mr. Dave Hochhalter what that was about because normally we just hear AFC. So their main team's the Rumble. So they'll be going as the Rumble, AFC Rumble. And then AFC 4 Shock, some of their younger players, some practice squad players. It's not going to be like their full squad. So kind of don't look at their results in the same way. And then Whiskey Jack's team out of Calgary. Then you got some other teams in there. Eclipse Juniors team. So they're actually going to make some noise playing the adults. That's great. And
awesome.
Victoria, I believe that's a club team, not the university. That's in the B side there. And then on the women's side, you have Victoria again. I believe they're a mixed team actually, and maybe just split up their squad. And then Drift, which is the Vancouver B side for the women's. And that's great that they have that. I know that's something Danny's talked about a lot. So there's also some junior teams in there, Eclipse and Vortex on the women's side, and Wild-ish. So it means some players from Wild, but maybe not. I'm not sure. Because I know they did that at UCI as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, we played them for the first time ever at UCI. They were a fun team to play.
There you go. So Flowerbowl got some results. I'm particularly interested in the TC Open results just to see how they're doing. And I know some of them personally from Ontario and going to kind of get reports from them on how it went and just sort of their experience playing out there. Yeah, if you can, I don't know if all of them have GoFundMes or fundraisers. I know some people get tired of seeing that, but I was talking to some of them at practice the other day and just talking about how they have to fund their travels to get there. So I'm like, who's paying for your like travel to Vancouver this weekend? They're like,
It's
well, we do.
expensive.
Like we pay, or like my parents, want to play.
Yeah.
My parents are really supportive and they're funding me to go. But for some of them, that might not be the case. So if you can help out in any way, shape, or form, try and help out because helps build the program, allows people to go and play there. So any other thoughts there on Flowerbowl before we continue on?
No, excited to see how it goes.
Lots of West Coast action. So
Yeah.
we talk a lot about East Coast stuff, but West Coast as well. And then we'll end the news here with AUDL. Toronto going 0-2 there, losing to Philly and DC, putting up some good efforts, but just ultimately coming up short. And then really the big effort was from Ottawa. Heartbreaking buzzer beater loss basically to Boston. Go to New York the next day, actually take half.
I saw that.
Yeah, they take half, which has not happened at all this year.
That's huge.
But ultimately ran out of gas. Jeff Bevan got hurt at some point in that game as well in the second half. And things kind of went awry for them. But the fact that they got some love from Tony Leonardo, who's commentates for the Empire, giving some love to Ottawa as well in sort of a reply to Brendan Adibay, one of the players on the Outlaws on Twitter, shows you that he has respect for the team and how they perform. So coming up this week, it's going to be Toronto versus Boston in Toronto. Ottawa's going to have a bye. So there you go. That's the AUDL update for you.
Awesome.
And now, the moment you've been waiting for, folks. The Masters players, they're probably in Ireland already waiting for this. But now we're going to try to highlight every team, like even if we just say the team's name and just say like, hey, this is like who they are. We're going to try to do that. So we're going to head to the break, hear from our sponsor, and then we'll jump into our World Masters Ultimate Club Championship preview.
This episode has been brought to you by VC Ultimate. VC Ultimate has been producing custom uniforms and performance apparel right here in Canada since 1998. VC's sublimated gear is made from 100% recycled FlexLight fabric, and design services and product samples are both free. Get your VC jersey today.
Hi, this is Carla DiFilippo, coach of the Toronto Sixers and co-founder of the Toronto Elites Junior Program. And you're listening to the Huckin A podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
Main event time. Let's go. It's WMUCC, the World Masters Ultimate Club Championships. By the time this airs, it's going to be a couple days before the first pull. Showcase games, all the good stuff. So we're going to break it down for you. 23 Canadian teams going. We're going to try to talk about every single team, even if it's for a mere 30 seconds. We're going to give every team some love right here, right now. So we're going to start it off. We're going to go open division, then women's and mix here, starting with the Masters. So for those that don't know, you got to be 33 or above to play in this division, at least in the open. So if you have aspirations, you can sign up whenever. So we're going to start with the first Canadian team seeded 6th out of 28 teams. That is still, I wrote down Kitchener-Waterloo, but really they're actually more Ottawa than anything else. They're actually Ottawa with some Kitchener-Waterloo players and just players from all over. So it's an Ottawa-based team. They played Tux, and they did really well in that tournament. Played Tombstone as well, defeated them in the final, and they've had some pod practices with their Ottawa group. This team doesn't really play in they call it the senior circuit, which is kind of funny when you're talking about Masters. But they have some players that played GOAT and Phoenix in the past. And their goal is to make a run for some hardware, and I believe that is very possible. They have, a team that's going to give them some trouble in Johnny Encore. I think people have seen the Voltron 2020 roster. That's basically like Sockeyes, best ever players playing together on a team with some other pickups. And it's like their team, I would venture to guess, would do really well even in the open division right now. So Voltron 2020 is there. Johnny Encore is in their pool. So we're going to see how it goes for Still, but I have high aspirations for them. And that's the first team we're going to look at. Second team is Ensom out of Montreal. 15th seed out of 28 teams. They finished second at UCI, so they were actually able to get the bid from that tournament. And they played a few tournaments since then, playing for different teams around Quebec. And one of their things is, at least that was told to me, was wanting to play with high spirit and kind of building this brand of their team. So if you've played in the, I don't want to say East Coast, because now that I have an East Coaster actually here, actually insulting, right? Because I know Danny and I, we go East Coast, West Coast, we're talking about that, but really it's not. Like what do you call us? Like Central?
I do, yeah. I mean, Quebec, I could give East Coast because they do have like borders on the Atlantic Ocean, but yeah, when people refer to Ontario as East Coast, I always laugh because I'm like, there's so much more east.
No, it's true. I learned about a new city called Antigonish, so there you go.
A great little town.
But yeah, they're excited to play American teams, and I'm excited to see or hear what they do against American teams as well, because that's something that you'll see. Notice a theme as we're talking about all these teams, how every team is really excited to play the Americans.
So up next, we have Dead Circus out of Halifax. So these are my pals. They're seeded 19th out of 28. So Dead Circus is obviously a play on Red Circus. So it's kind of like the Masters team of Red Circus, but they actually have players who are currently playing on RC and currently play on Madhouse as well. It's a really, really good mix of guys who either used to play on these teams or still play on these teams. So I was chatting with their captain the other day, just as he was getting excited, to go to Ireland. Oh, my cat is coming on the screen. So they, the seeding in Masters is obviously, it's always out of your control what your seeding is, but seeding's particularly challenging when, like, obviously those who's doing the seeding don't know a ton about the teams, because Masters teams are not, filmed as much and all this kind of stuff. So Dead Circus feels like they can definitely beat their seed. I agree. I think they're a really strong team. They don't have any like specific placement goal in mind, but they want to play to their potential. They want to work hard. They want to have fun. Really enjoy this opportunity. They've gotten to do some really good practicing. So they have like semi-regular practices. They've also gotten to scrimmage against RC a lot, which is good. They've had like 20-year-olds running them around for the past month, which is great practice. And then there were 2 local tournaments here in Nova Scotia that they participated in to get lots of reps together. So I think they're feeling pretty good, and I think they could do well and at least crack that top 16 and hopefully go from there. And then the last Masters Open team to talk about is Carbon, which they come from Edmonton. And so they're primarily made up of Calgary and Edmonton senior players. And then they do also have a few out-of-region players, which I think would probably be the case for most of these teams. You get a few pickups to fill up the roster. I think they're most looking forward to just kind of seeing how they match up against similar teams. They're coming in at a low seed. They're seeded 25 out of 28. So I think they're hoping to break that, and they, they feel like they can be competitive and they can match up against some of these experienced teams. They also made a note that, they're working hard, and so they're going to party hard too. So I think they're going to have a good time. Ireland's a great location for that. So I think that they're excited too. And I think they can crack that top 25, as like I said, they're seeded pretty low to start.
And a cool thing too is the fact that they're like this Alberta, at least the way they told us, is Alberta collective. Mm-hmm. So like we see in the open side the Rumble, AFC Rumble, and Whiskey Jacks, but they're having some alumni together, so that's pretty sweet. And so that's your open division preview there. Would we love to see multiple Canadian teams in the top 8? Absolutely. Let's get it done. So
definitely.
We're gonna jet over here to to your not your division just yet.
I mean, it would be. I am old, so.
Are you? Do you qualify for Women's Masters?
I do. I actually, I'm 32 this year, so I could be playing Masters for the past 2 years if a pandemic didn't happen. But anyway, so we have some exciting teams in the Women's Masters division as well. So we have Stello, which people have probably heard about. So they're, a play on Stella. And so Stello is coming in ranked pretty high. They're ranked 6th. And I think they're going to do really well. So Stello, they were practicing indoors in the spring, and then they've been practicing outdoors when they can. They got to do get some really good local reps. A few weeks ago, they had a tournament in Ottawa, against some of the other teams around and against Stella. And obviously, it's a bit challenging when they play each other because there's a lot of players that cross over to both. They have an exciting pickup from Salty. So they have Jessie Brown, who I have to shout her out because you're going to see her and she's amazing. I'm not biased at all, but you will see she's incredible. And they have really strong players on this team. They have the potential to do really, really well. So they're, like I said, they're seeded 6. Their goal is top 5. So basically to break seed. There are, as Theo mentioned, some really strong American teams. One in particular, Reboot Squad, that's in their pool, which is essentially like Brute Squad, which is
Brute Squad players.
You could make a pretty solid universe line on that team. But I think they're up to the challenge. They've been working really hard. They've been posting lots on socials about how excited and how much they're working. And I think they're going into it with the right mindset that they can win every matchup if they play to their potential. So really excited to see how they're going to perform.
They have the legend Anne Mercier now, and Boulanger. Hopefully, once again, these French names, hopefully I get them right. But talking her out of retirement, that's pretty cool. She did win a national title with Scandal back in the day. So excited to see that. Now, a team that's associated with Stello, you got lowercase 9 out of 18. At least that's their seed right now. And from what I know, I think they lost some of their players to Stello, because there's a bit of overlap there. So they've had some local scrimmages as well. There's a Ottawa pod and then more of like a KW pod. So they got a mashup of different teams, which is always good to see. And so a lot of club teams you've probably heard of, they probably played for, like Stella, Reunion, Union, all that kind of stuff. So some old Capitals players in there as well. And hey, they said this. I didn't say this. They sent this to us. Their goal, get ready for this, to beat the seed and finish in the top 4. So
hell yeah,
they're trying to make the top 4, and that's that's exciting. I like when teams are, some teams are honest. Hey, we're just here to party. Not here to party, but that's part of our MO. But they're like, hey, we're trying to get that top 4.
Definitely.
So
yeah,
that's what we want to do. They're going to rely on the chemistry, and it's going to be interesting because speaking of cohesion and chemistry, if you have these 2 pods, I wonder if they're going to go with, I don't want to speak strategy into the universe here, but you probably kind of go with the lines. Is like you have your Ottawa line, you got your KW line, and you kind of let them play with each other because they've just been working together. So that's maybe a strategy that they probably already know about. But they won gold in 2019 there, and now they get to play at Worlds. So really exciting for lowercase. And a team that was at UCI this past year, I guess 2021, is Berta out of, you guessed it, Alberta. 11 out of 18 there as their seed. They were to play in a women's tournament in Edmonton called the Winter City Warm-Up. Love that name. And also played in that warm-up tournament in Ottawa, it looks like. So they're made up of mostly, it's kind of going to be similar to what you heard about Carbon. So a collective of players from the province. So Wild players out of Calgary, Fleury out of Edmonton, getting together. And Kelsey, you already touched upon this, but for a lot of teams, it's hard to set goals when you might not be practicing that much, and maybe you are, but you just don't know about these other teams.
Yeah.
Because as you mentioned, a lot of these American teams are getting the love, which kind of makes sense. But it's interesting. Their focus is, once they see Stello in the showcase game, and the opening ceremony is underway. They know, it's go time. So that's exciting. And one other thing I want to say about them is that they have players from these cities that you normally don't hear about. So Nanaimo, Victoria you hear about, Yellowknife, the territory, Fort McMurray, and Burnaby. So a little bit of Canadian love right there for all these different players that are playing for Alberta. So.
And then the last Masters women's team from Canada is going to be macrame. So they're coming out of Quebec. They're starting at the 15th out of 18th seed. 18 is a really small number. I'm just kind of cluing into that as I'm looking at this. So I don't know a ton about macrame. I do know that one of my close friends is picking up with them, and they're very lucky to have her. She's a stud. But I think that they've definitely gotten to do some local practices. I think they participated in a local tournament recently. They don't have any specific like placement goals because again, seeding is not a controllable, and it's hard to put like a number on what your placement, what you want it to be when again, like some of that is out of your control in terms of where you end up, what pool, whatever. So they don't have any like specific number goals, but I think, just like any team, they want to perform well. They want to, meet their potential. They want to have strong games against good opponents and also just enjoy this like incredible experience. Like, any version of Worlds is sick. Getting to go to Worlds in Ireland is extra sick. There's so many Canadian teams, there's so much Canadian representation. So I think them and all the other teams are just stoked for the opportunity.
Yeah, they're fired up, and we'll jet over now into mixed, a division that's going to have a lot of Quebec representation here. So, there's a lot of Quebec teams that love their mixed ultimate, and I know a big thing for them is 4-on-4 and 4-on-4 co-ed, and it kind of maybe transfers over to the outdoor mixed as well. So
yeah, for sure. So
I'll let you go first.
the first team or the highest ranked Canadian team in the mixed division is I might butcher this, but it's Epoch, I think.
Yeah, we're non-Quebec or French speakers.
I know. So putting a Newfoundlander in to pronounce things is a questionable decision. Anyways, they're out of Quebec. They're currently seated 6th, and they're going in guns a-blazing. They want to perform well. They they started their practicing back in February. They wanted to start even earlier, but obviously COVID had other plans. They went to mixed Easterns. They did some scrimmages. They've had a lot of Zoom meetings, they said, just like everybody else during the pandemic. But they're made up of Cube and Onyx and Odyssey and Iris and their goal, and they did not mince their words. Their goal is to be a better team and win the gold medal. So they're going for gold, quite literally, and you love to hear it. So yeah, they're ranked 6th right now. So they just got to do 5 placements better to reach their goal. But yeah, you love to see that they're going for the podium.
Yeah, I know they mentioned a book that they're reading on leadership as well. So it just sounds like they're really bought in. And there's another Quebec team that's trying to make some noise here in Q. Hopefully I'm getting it right, Q Old. There's a reason why Kelsey's here. We love having Kelsey on the podcast, but Kelsey is in place of someone who's playing on this team in Danny. So Q Old's going to be out there. They've had tryouts in December and started practicing. I know Danny actually went out for a weekend to go train with them. So you can know that they've been trying to get ready to go. And yeah, with the winters the way they are, as many Canadians know, they weren't able to practice outdoors as maybe they wanted to. But it's kind of similar teams. Cube, a couple of players that play for Team Canada, and they've just played for different teams around the province. They want to improve on the 12th ranking they have currently. And I like the sentiment. You want to play great ultimate the right way. So what does the right way mean? Probably means playing with spirit and just giving your best. So I like that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I was just going to say there's another Quebec team. So the third Canadian Mixed Masters team is BOD, and they're from Montreal. And so they are, I guess, a little bit different than some of the other teams. They're a bit more of a pickup team. They haven't had the opportunity to have as many in-person practices. So they've only had a handful of practices. They said lots of virtual encouragement and lots of individual work has been going in. They're a mix of a bunch of different teams and folks that play together in leagues and all of that. And so they said, they are a pickup team. They're realistic about their chances. They're not necessarily going for the podium, but what I did like what they said. They're a competitive group and they plan to treat every matchup, every point, and every game as an opportunity. And so they said 1 point, 1 battle at a time. So they're going in with the right mindset. They're just going to try to win every matchup. And so they're starting in 20th out of 33. And I think, their goal, I'm sure, is to hopefully maintain that. But yeah, they're kind of going in like this is a huge opportunity, great experience for the players. And they're just going to take it 1 point at a time.
You gotta love, first of all, before we continue, just the mixed division having so many teams. So that's pretty sick. So that's pretty fire, as the kids say. So last team here seeded 23 out of 33. Reunion out of Toronto, Ontario. There's actually a couple, they were lucky to be filmed twice here at the Toronto Ultimate Exhibition. So if you want to watch Reunion games, you can go to video.ultiworld.com and check them out. They played that tournament that I just mentioned and won the whole thing. So they beat their siblings in Union with players that are also play for Union but decide to play with Reunion that game just to get reps. So they have players that have also played for Crash out of Kitchener-Waterloo as well, and a couple players who are playing for a new mixed team in Toronto called Danger Noodles. So their team rule is this: have fun, don't get injured, and the third rule is might as well win. So I know some of them are already there right now. They're specifically excited for this matchup against a team called, I think it's Hades. I'm not sure if they spelled it properly, but out of Germany. And they actually played them as Union in 2014 in Lecco. So that's really exciting that they, first of all, Warren, who sent us this information, even remembered that, and that they're looking forward to it. So Reunion seated a little bit lower, but trying to make some noise here in the mixed division. And so that wraps up our Masters, and now we get to go to a division that I am not able to compete in right now. Neither are you. The Grand Masters. So forgot to mention earlier that I believe it's 30, correct, 30 for women or female matching players. But in Grand Masters, a whole different ballgame. You got to be the big 4-0 in the Open and 37 in the women. So got to be a little bit older, got to have more seasoned ultimate experience, a little more wear and tear on the knees, but also more experience with the throws. So
totally.
That's what we'll say for that. But looking at the seed, 6 out of 15, Tombstone. I was very high up on Tombstone at UCI. They let me down a little bit. Then didn't pick them at Tux. Then they defeated Still on the first day. So they're trying to prove me wrong there. But I have very high hopes for them. This team is made up of a lot of former GOAT players that you may have heard of, like Toli Vasiliev, Kirk Nyland, Sean Chua. I keep going on the whole list. But they have a lot of strong players. They also have some players out of Kingston and Barrie and Vancouver. And a couple former Ottawa players to make up their team. And they're going to be good. That's all I'm going to say. They're going to be good. They're going to have to play a team that is Johnny Encore. Johnny Walker. I'm getting those two teams mixed up there. But they're going to have to play a Johnny Walker is in their pool. You know how good Johnny Bravo is, so you got to watch out for them. They're going to do some damage as well. So, their goal is to be the top Canadian team and then also better their 2018 bronze medal. And goal 3 is win the whole dang thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that is and they also provided a warning, which a team that you're going to talk about in Fig Jam, they said they are very seated incredibly low and are super strong in caps, super. So watch out for them. But yeah, I like Tombstone's chances, and I'm going to give some love here on the podcast.
Awesome. And then just shortly after Tombstone, we have a very aptly named team for the past couple of years. Quebec loves their Q names, and so this team's name is Quarantine. I'm actually super curious if they named when they came up with that name. It's pretty on the nose for these days. But so Quarantine comes out of Quebec City. They're currently 9 out of 15 in seeding. They said their team is a big mix of several different teams and advanced league players. They had kind of some big aspirations to start their preparations in December, but our little pal COVID obviously had different plans. So they ended up starting a little bit later, but everyone was in the same boat there. So no, big disadvantage, I'm sure. They've been preparing. They did a Grandmasters round robin prep tournament in April. They did mention that the weather is probably going to be challenging for most teams, and they're going to try to use that. So I do think I've heard, and I did not fact check this, but I heard that Limerick is very windy. So if a team is like adequately prepared for that, then I think that could be huge. So this to me suggests that they feel they're ready for adverse conditions. And they just said that this is like the first opportunity for a lot of their players to go to Worlds, and so they just really want to enjoy that experience, and hopefully they soak it in, and they also perform really well.
I think that sentiment's gonna be true for all the teams, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the players with parental obligations or work, like this might be as we've learned through COVID, this might be your last chance. So quote Eminem, you gotta just take your one shot and one opportunity. Don't let it slip,
Exactly.
So use it. And two more teams to talk about. NSOM. They also have a Grandmasters team, so just didn't get the info from them for the Grandmasters, but they have this program that we talked about in the Masters that's continually growing and just getting that notoriety. You're seeing that here, having a Grandmasters team. They did compete at Jazz Fest, so saw them out there. Finished in the 9-16 bracket in that, so playing with some of the adults. So that's pretty cool to see. And they're seated right below Quarantine. Seeing 4 Canadian teams with a pool or a group of just 15 is pretty sweet as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the last team that we'll talk about is what I've been told, the criminally underseeded Fig Jam out of Calgary. So they've been practicing in Calgary, and those that aren't obviously just training on their own, having training camp weekends and things like that. And able to also like train or play against other teams as well, like Carbon, for example. So that's good to hear. And many of them have played on other Calgary teams, specifically Flux in 2019. They won silver in the Mixed Masters at CUC. So there you go. I was told this program was established in 2007. They've had over 140 players wear FJ on their jersey. I need one of those, by the way. That's a sweet name. And so they have a bunch of silver medals at CUC, four in a row from someone's count, as well as a gold in 2013. And they're just ready to go. They're focused on team management. So call smart lines, matchups, and rest and recover properly. So, I mean, I think that's like all teams.
That should always be the goal, yeah.
Yeah. And just hearing from, actually, I got a chance to hear from 2 players from this team. So,
great.
One in particular, Rob McLeod, who you might know as Ultimate Frisbee Rob there for those in the audience, talked about how this is actually his first Ultimate World Championship. So this is like pretty exciting for him. Coming off a minor MCL sprain, being able to recover from that and play is pretty cool. So thank you for sharing that personal story, Rob, and wish you and your team the best of luck.
So we are going to hop over to the Grandmasters mixed teams now, which we have some representation in that division as well. So the first team, or the highest ranked team from Canada in that division, is Grey Owl. So they're currently seeded 6th out of 11. So it's a Winnipeg based team, although they do also have 7 Toronto athletes, they said. They've been practicing 2 times a week plus doing scrimmages. So it sounds like they've been prepping really hard. They're doing lots of individual fitness as well and team training. They they said that during the winter, one of their teammates, Joshua, motivated them to get out there and run by challenging them to run from Winnipeg to Limerick and track their kilometers as a team, which is pretty cool. Also, that must be really far. I don't know how many kilometers that would be, but I'm guessing many. And so, they were kind of frank with their answer of what their expectations are too. They want to come home with some hardware. So I love that they're looking for a podium finish. It was also pretty interesting. They said that their team is comprised of players who have played many different teams, including, but not limited to, Chaos, Fusion, Mint, Terra, Union, Reunion, Lotus, Capitals, General Strike, Surly, Tombstone. So that's just to name a few. So they're a huge mix of experience and talent. And they're looking to have a huge finish. So they're looking to beat their seed that is currently 6 out of 11.
There you go. And now another team that's going to have some players that maybe have played against them just because they're from Toronto is Cursive. And for those who don't know, Cursive is actually spelled cur, and then the S is a $sign. So it's not just it's not spelled in cursive for you, just so you know. Not as much preparation on their end, from what it sounds like. But that's okay. They said they're still ready to go. That's what matters. They're also part of a team that some people might have heard of, a Toronto League team called Banana Cream Pie, and also a team that went to the WMUCC before, Bingo and Chill, as well as
that's a great team name.
Yeah, they also have some gnarly jerseys too, and then another team from Durham, who you may have heard of, in Backdraft. So, this is a cool goal. Winning goal would be nice, but one of their goals is to beat at least one U.S. team.
Love that.
And I am gonna argue, Kelsey. I bet you that's not every team said this, but I bet you, in
Definitely.
their minds, the U.S. is this country that for some of them, maybe they haven't played as much because they haven't played for GOAT and going down to these tournaments. So for them, beating a U.S. team is like a milestone.
Definitely. It definitely is, especially because, like we've said before, that particularly in the women's division, but even, a lot of players who still play in the senior division can qualify for these Masters and even the Grandmasters divisions. And so, you're getting to play against people that either currently or very recently played very high level club ultimate. And we're most familiar with the American teams and the American players generally. And so the opportunity to play against them and hopefully get a W against them is huge.
Yeah, and I will say this funny thing that was sent to me. I mean, a lot of the stuff was funny, but our very deep cuts stem from a very deep inner hatred of our handlers by our cutters. So that I'll leave the preview of Cursive with that quote.
That's so funny. I love cutting deep, so I guess I hate the handlers on my team. No, that's not true. So the third Grandmasters mixed team from Canada, so again, there's 4 in this division of 11, which is pretty cool, is seeded 9th. They're the Happy Campers, and they're coming out of Victoria. Although they did say that only about 60% of their team is from Victoria. There's about 20% from the island and then 20% from all over Canada. I know they have a pickup from New Brunswick. They have a pickup from Halifax because I know a couple of the women who are playing with them. So they kind of have an interesting story because they lost to Reunion at UCI on Universe to miss out going to Worlds in the Masters division, but then they were offered a slot in the Grandmasters division. So, it works out if you're older. There's always somewhere to play.
That means some players probably didn't make that.
That's true. Yeah, they were too young to keep playing.
Too young. Yeah.
Yeah, so their primary goal for the campers for any tournament is to have fun playing with our friends and to enjoy the experience. So, I mean, the Happy Campers name, I think, kind of alludes to that for sure. They said that their name actually is a little bit of a pushback to how serious ultimate teams are operating these days. So they want to keep it happy and light and spirited and enjoy this opportunity in their time over in Ireland.
Yeah, I saw that response and I was thinking that there are definitely some players that I know that would push back against that. They would call themselves the serious players or something. But I think there is a balance to be had. I know some people play really well with that light and happy style, but some players, I'm not saying yell at each other, but some players love to be dialed in as well. So it's just kind of interesting to see different philosophies. Mm-hmm. And Danny has talked about this team as well as just a joy to play against. I know Clayton Howlett, who's done some broadcasts for Ultimate Canada as well, He's coaching them, and well, I know he was playing with the Masters team, but I do not think he is Grandmaster's age yet, so that is why he's probably not able to play. And that just kind of sucks for some of them, but the fact they got a spot's pretty cool, and the fact that they can field at least more than 50% of their team from that city is also cool. So the last team in Grandmasters Mixed actually got filmed against Grey Owls, so you could watch that game from Tux. I got to keep pushing the streams here, or the film. But they're 10 out of 11. They are everyone's favorite meme team. That is Max Power. You've seen their memes. They're named after hairdryer. They've been to many tournaments like Boracay. I know they've been to a few more, but I know for sure they've been to Boracay. And they also have this like jersey situation that they like to do, which is like they'll take like the Blue Jays jersey, but they'll put Max Power on it. And they had tank tops with the Maple Leafs, but it's like a Maple Leaf, but it says Max Power. Just really cool stuff. And their MO is good vibes only. That's all they want.
Love that.
We don't go to tourneys to win. We go to play good frisbee, have fun, and sometimes we end up winning.
It's just a byproduct.
And they just want to play non-North American teams. So looks like I don't even know how. I'm trying to look here. I think there's a lot of American teams in their division. So I don't know what their wish is going to come true with that. But that's Max Power, everyone's favorite meme team, at least in Toronto. I don't know if their memes have reached over to the East Coast there, but.
And so now we're gonna hop into the last division that has Canadian teams, which is the Great Grandmasters Open Division. And to remain on the food theme of some of the team names that we've had already, we have Toast, which is ranked right in the middle. So they're currently 5 out of 10. They're a team out of Calgary. They are, people who have played on Whiskey Jacks and AFC. They did get to do a little prep tournament back in the spring, and so it was kind of like a training camp prep tournament. There was 5 teams there for them to practice. They, some of them have been removed from Ultimate for a couple of years and kind of coming back into it. I don't know if that was from the pandemic or if they retired and then saw the opportunity to come back. But either way, I think, they said that it's been a really great experience to get back into playing after a few years away and to play with a group of new/old faces. And so, yeah, they said that they're just really excited for the opportunity. Like I said, they're seeded right in the middle, so hopefully they can beat that seed. But there's 10 teams in this division, and 3 of them are Canadian, so that's pretty cool.
And Kelsey, I'm not sure if you know this fact, but do you know what age you have to be to play in this division? Because
I actually have no idea.
I'm pretty sure. Like, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure it's 50. Like
that would make sense based on the other ages.
Yeah, so I think it's 50. You gotta be 50 to play in this division. I still have about a little bit less than 20 years to get there. I'm gonna be honest with you. If this podcast lasts till I'm 50, I do not think I'll be playing until that age. Is all I'm saying.
I don't think my knees will last that long.
So the fact that they have these people doing that is amazing. I know they wanted a specific shout out to, hopefully I'm saying this right, Rolly Ryan, Andrew Pickup, and the Calgary crew, as well as Chris Cannon for getting Vancouver players to play. So kudos to you for helping form this team.
Mm-hmm.
The last 2 teams we're going to talk about are both from Toronto. You got Soup, so following that theme name, stands for some older Ultimate players. Didn't get
I didn't know that.
Them, but I know you didn't know that?
No, that's a fun little fact.
Yeah, that we said we want to highlight every team, even if it's for 30 seconds.
Love that.
So some older Ultimate players, or this year specifically, supporters of Ukrainian people. So
wow.
Come on, their name is dual. You can do both. You can say it's for older Ultimate players, but you would also support Ukraine. I know WIFDIV posted something on their website as well about that. So, we're not a political podcast, so we're not going to talk too much about that. But Soup's also a team from Toronto. I know a lot of those players have played throughout the Toronto Ultimate Club, and I don't want to mix them up with the other Toronto team. So Soup's 6. The other Toronto team is Toronto Soars Rex, and they're 7th. They actually, or 7th seed, they played at Tux as well, and they were previously, and so a similar theme, they were previously a Grandmasters team, but had to move to Great Grandmasters for this tournament where a bid was available.
Wow.
So half of their roster, and this makes sense, was ineligible to begin with. So they had to recruit some other players. They're going for 6th place, which is pretty cool. And for a lot of them, and this is a common theme, is ready to go back and play these tournaments. And so I want to give a special, pat on the back for these great Grandmasters players. You're playing at 50 years old. That is cool.
Yeah.
Probably won't do it myself, but good for you.
Yeah, that's badass.
Yeah, that's all we can say about that. So, Kelsey, that wraps up our preview. Hopefully, every team you felt some form of love that we talked about you. And for those who don't know the Masters division, or great Grandmasters or Grandmasters, now you know a little bit more. You can follow along. I believe they'll be streaming some games. I know they listed commentators, and Troy Weston out of Vancouver in Canada is going to be commentating. So you can follow along there and check out their coverage. It's going to be over a week, and I know a lot of the teams are, from my knowledge, only playing twice a day.
Generally, that's for Worlds. They do max twice a day. There's like a rule in the player book, and I think there's like some technical exception they can make if the schedule like absolutely requires it. But with the lower numbers in each division, I don't think that they'll ever have to do more than 2 games in a day.
Yeah, Kelsey just exposed the fact that I didn't play Worlds as a player.
Well, some of us are going next month and read the 40-page player book last week.
Hey, there you go. So this is why you're on the podcast. You're able to bring that knowledge. 2 games a day. It's kind of like college nationals, same thing where you only play twice.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. The whole, playing 4 or 5 games in a day just not going to work, especially for the Masters division. I feel like there'd be a lot of pushback if they had to play more than 2 games a day.
Definitely.
Hey, this is Josh Kerr, captain of Winnipeg's PBHG, your 2021 Ultimate Canada Invitational silver medalists in the mixed division, and you're listening to the Huckin A podcast, your coast-to-coast guide for all things Canadian Ultimate.
So that wraps up our preview. We thank you for watching this podcast. That actually ends our episode. We're going to hit right into the outro here. So, Kelsey, I'm not going to make you do what I sometimes get Danny to do, which is plug our socials. So I'll do it myself here. Huckin_A on Instagram. We've been posting clips. We post about episodes. We share stories. Follow us along there. You can follow us along on Twitter and see some sporadic tweets from us. But the episode is not done because you can join us for subscriber only. Kelsey, you got some stories to share because you're a guest host, which is awesome. So hint to the audience what the story is going to be about so that the stories are going to just be so intriguing that they're going to have to subscribe just to listen to it.
So this story is the most embarrassing moment I've ever had in my ultimate Frisbee career thus far.
And you're willing to share it publicly. So head over to the subscriber only. If not, we'll see you next week. Kelsey, I think we're going to have you back on next week.
I think
correct?
so, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to be talking, we're going to kind of recap the mid-level of that tournament of WMUCC. By the time we get it out, there'll be some games being played. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But otherwise, we'll see you in the subscriber only. Kelsey shares her most embarrassing story. Let's go.